So first you're going to open up VS Code and you're going to click on Open Folder. Then you're going to pick where you want to add all of your code. So I'm going to make a folder called Tutorials. And I'm going to select that folder. And now we are going to create a file in that folder called brat.html where we can type everything. The next thing you're going to want to do is create an HTML element like this, and in that element we are going to put a title, and the title is going to be album. So now in the tutorials folder we have an HTML document called brat.html. The next thing we're going to do is open this with live server so that we can make sure that what we're typing is actually showing up on our document. So now it's going to open up in your browser and you can look at the title to make sure it's working. So the title says album, so we know that anything that we type in our document is going to show up here in our browser. So now we can continue typing. So now we're going to go back to VS Code and continue typing. The next thing you want to do is add the body of the HTML document. So you can add a body element by typing left arrow body, closed arrow, and then the same thing again, but this time you're going to put a slash behind the word body. And anything that we type in here is what's going to show up on our page on our browser. So if I just type anything random and then I go check the document, or I go check the browser and I refresh, we want to make sure that whatever we type shows up right away as we type it. So we're going to go to File and scroll down and put on autosave. So anytime we type anything, it should automatically show up. So in our body, we're going to add a div, which is just an element where you have a section so that you can keep everything organized in sections. So if you want to make one section this color and make another section have a different color, everything is organized so you know exactly where to type everything and how to change everything. So in our div, we're going to put a heading. So we're going to put the first type of heading, which is H1. So you're going to add this H1 element. And in there is where we're going to type the text for the album. So let's go check and see if that worked. Yep, it's there. So again, we're going to have the body element, and then in that body element, we're going to have a div element. In that div element, we're going to have the heading element, which is just the H1 element, and in that heading, the text. We're going to have the text there. So that's pretty much it for the visuals. And now we need to add styling to make it look like the album cover. So the first thing we're going to do is add styling to the body. So to do that, you're going to create a style element, and you're going to type body, and you're going to put these two arrows, this parentheses type arrow thing, and we're going to change the background color. So to do that, you type background color, and we're going to put the specific color that she uses for her album, which is 8AC E00. This color is the hex value, so you can drag around to pick any color, because these are the red, green, and blue values converted into a hex code. So whatever the hex code is for any color is what you're going to put here for background color. So in this case, we're just going to leave this color, which is her classic album cover color. The next thing we're going to do is add the styling for the div. So we want, oh, okay, let's make sure that that worked. So now it's that iconic green color. The next thing you want to do is make sure that the text is in the middle, because right now it's in the left hand corner. We want everything to be centered in the middle. So we're going to work on our div to make sure that works. So the first thing we're going to do is use a type of styling that is very common. We're just going to put display, and we're going to make the display type flex, because when you use a display type of flex, then you have a lot of freedom to move the elements around where you want them to be. So for this particular design, we want everything to be centered. So we want it to be centered both vertically and horizontally. So we can do that by adding something called justify content, and then the value we're going to put for that is center. So this is going to make sure that everything is going to be centered. So after we do that, we can see that our text is now in the center. And we want everything to be centered, so we're going to use another setting that will also make it centered. So you can use this called align items, which is going to make everything centered. And you can only use justify content and align items if you set the display to flex. So now that we have these three lines, the text will be in the center. Now the next thing we want to do is make sure that it is vertically centered, because this only centers the text horizontally. But we want everything to be centered vertically too. So we're going to set the width to be 100% of the width of the screen. So you can do that by typing width 100 VW, which stands for view width. So it's going to measure the width of the screen, and then it's going to set that div to be the exact same 100% of the width of that screen. So we're going to do the same thing for the height, and it's going to be 100% of the height of your screen, of the view height of your screen. So now anything that you type will be centered vertically and horizontally based on however many pixels that your computer calculated the screen to be. So now it's centered both vertically and horizontally. Because if this is 100% of your screen, then we want it to be in the center, so that should be around 50%. So now it's centered both vertically and horizontally. The last thing that we need to do is fix the font. So right now our font is the basic font that it comes with. So we want to change the font of our H1 element. So we're going to type H1, and then in the brackets, we are going to change the font size to 100 pixels and see how that looks. Okay. If we changed it to 50 pixels, it would look like this. So we're going to change it, we're going to keep it at 100 pixels for the font size. Then for the font weight, we're going to make it 300. Then for the font weight, we're going to make it 300. Okay. Then we're going to change the font family. So she uses the font family Arial, but what's different is she uses the narrow version of Arial. But if your computer can't do Arial, you have to put a backup, and then the backup will be Arial. And then if your computer really doesn't know any of those fonts, you're going to use sans serif. So you have to make sure that it works on any type of computer, because the font needs to show up, the text needs to show up even if you don't have the font that that we use. So our computer might be able to recognize what Arial Narrow is, but someone else's computer might not, so it's just going to use the generic, one of these generic fonts. So this is just so that the computer knows what to do if they can't figure out what font you're talking about. So let's see how that looks. Great. Now we have one more thing we need to do, and that's to put that classic blur that it has. So we're going to put a filter on our text. You can put a filter on your text. So the filter we're going to use is the blur filter. And we're gonna put a 3-pixel blur on our text. So this is what it looks like. We have our font size of 100 pixels, we have our font weight, we have the font family of Arial Narrow, and then we put a blur filter of 3 pixels on the text. So when you add all of that, this is it without the blur. So if we take out the blur, it just looks like this. But to match the way that she did it, we have to add the blur, and then you're done. So that's just about 30 lines of code so far. But we can add one more thing. And also, if you make your screen, if you make your browser half of the screen, it looks even more like the cover. Okay, the last thing that you can do is you can go back to your heading and you can actually put this in one line. So we have the body, the div, the H1 heading. But what we can actually do now is put the entire heading in an A element. So an A element is what you use if you want to add a link. So we're going to put a link to her Instagram. So you can do that by putting the heading in the A element, and then you're going to add a reference to whatever link you want. But in this case, I'm going to add a link to her Instagram. Okay, so when you do that, it's actually going to change the font slightly, but you can fix it because right now it has that filter that happens when you make something a link. So if you go to the browser, you can actually click on this and it's going to take you to her Instagram. Which is what we want it to do, but we don't want it to look like that. So what we're gonna do is we're going to go to the styling element and we're going to change the color to make sure that it stays that classic color. So we're going to create a styling for our A with the brackets, and we're going to set the color to be black. And we're also going to make sure that there's no styling on the link. So right now it has that line under it, but we don't want it to have a line. We know that we can click it. We don't want it to have that line. So we're going to go back and put none for our text decoration. So there should be no text decoration on our text. So now if we go and check, it is back to how we left it, and you can still click it. You can tell because our cursor has changed to this pointer instead of the arrow. And then at the bottom, you can see that it pops up with what the link is. So that's how you can recreate her album, and let me know if you try it. And it ends up being just 32 lines of code.